My name is Annie, and I'm going to be presenting the results of a study looking at prosocial motivation in adolescents with conduct problems and varying levels of callous and unemotional traits. The study is a part of my PhD project, for which I am supervised by Professors Essie Vidding and Eamon McCrory, and the study has been run in collaboration with Dr. Patricia Lockwood, Dr. Ruth Roberts, Dr. Peter Martin, Harriet Phillips, and Casey Brown. Prosocial behavior is defined as voluntarily performing acts that benefit others, and prosocial acts are considered a fundamental part of both human social and moral development. However, there exists a striking minority of people who do not exhibit typical levels of prosocial behavior. Individuals with psychopathy are characterized by a lack of empathy and guilt, as well as severe and premeditated antisocial behavior. They also behave in ways that clearly prioritize their own needs over those of others. Psychopathy does not appear from nowhere in adulthood, and research clearly identifies that there are young people with remarkably similar profiles to adults with psychopathy who are at risk of developing the personality disorder in adulthood themselves. These adolescents display a combination of conduct problems and elevated callous-unemotional or CU traits. Adolescents with conduct problems and high levels of CU traits demonstrate a lack of empathy and guilt and a lack of concern about the impact of their behavior on others. They are also more likely to engage in premeditated acts of cruelty or violence for their own gain than adolescents with conduct problems and lower levels of CU traits. Both conduct problems and high CU traits in adolescence and psychopathy in adulthood are associated with low self-reported prosocial behavior and prioritizing the self at a cost to others in experimental measures of prosocial behavior. However, typically studies investigating prosocial behavior directly pit prosocial and less prosocial options against one another in a single choice. For example, splitting a reward between yourself and another person. In real life, our decisions and actions to benefit others or ourselves may not be in direct conflict with one another. In our study, we use a novel paradigm designed by Patricia Lockwood and colleagues to investigate prosocial motivation in action. Participants are offered a choice to behave prosocially and then, importantly, have to exert a prosocial action once this choice has been made. We wanted to find out whether prosocial choice will be reduced in adolescents with conduct problems and high CU traits relative to other groups, and whether we will see something similar for prosocial effort. In the prosocial effort task, participants used a gripper to win points towards gift vouchers for themselves or for a fictional other participant. They believe this to be another boy at another school. In each round, participants are always presented with a choice between an easy 1-point option and a harder option, which is worth more points. The amount of effort it will take to squeeze the gripper in order to obtain the points is indicated by how full the pie is. Importantly, for the harder option, the amount of points that can be won and the amount of effort it will take to win them vary independently. Once the participants have considered their options, they can make a choice. They then exert effort by squeezing the gripper to the required amount for at least 1 second, after which they get feedback. Importantly, there are 2 types of trial. Trials where the participant is working for someone else, shown here in blue, or trials where they are working for themselves, and there are equal numbers of each kind of trial. In our study, we had 88 male participants between the ages of 11 to 16. Group assignment was based on standard measures used in the field. Here I am showing the results regarding prosocial choice, that is, the proportion of rounds where the participant chose the more equitable option for themselves in red versus for someone else in blue. You can see that across all effort levels, participants in all groups chose to work for themselves more than they did for the other person. This did not differ between the groups, and this was also the same across all levels of reward. However, on trials where the participant chose the more equitable option, we did see a group difference in force exerted across the groups. Here you can see that all groups made more effort for themselves than they did for the other, termed superficial prosociality by Lockwood and colleagues. However, the difference in effort made for the self versus the other, that is, the difference between the red and blue bars, is greater in the group with conduct problems and high levels of CU traits relative to the other 2 groups across all levels of effort and reward. Here's that interaction visualized again. Here you can see the mean force by group averaged across all levels of effort and reward. So, although all the adolescents in our study were working more for themselves than for the other, the adolescents with conduct problems and high levels of CU traits showed this to a much larger extent than the other 2 groups. Our next step will be to apply a computational model to these data to examine reward by effort discounting across groups and whether this varies with CU traits. To conclude, this is the first study to utilize an experimental task to investigate prosocial behavior in adolescents that does not directly pit prosocial and less prosocial choices against one another. In other words, our participants had equal opportunity to benefit themselves and the other person without having to choose. We observed that when given the opportunity to help the other without any obvious detriment to their own gain, adolescents with conduct problems and high levels of CU traits chose as prosocially as the other groups, but then acted less prosocially. They displayed increased superficial prosociality relative to the other 2 groups. This speaks to the distinction between understanding social expectations at first and actually enacting the prosocial behaviors. Atypical motivation to engage in prosocial actions could contribute to impoverished social relationships and increased risk for psychopathy and antisocial behavior in this group. This novel finding adds to the evidence base that indicates heterogeneity among adolescents with conduct problems. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this presentation. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch with me by email or on Twitter.